Daniel Carter had never liked diplomatic missions. The food was always strange, the conversations were always boring, and he spent most of his time standing in corners while important people talked about important things. But orders were orders, and when Commander Lisa Grant asked him to join the engineering team for the peace summit with the Kithran Empire, he could not refuse. The Kithran space station was massive. It floated in the darkness of space like a silver flower with 1,000 petals. Each petal was a different section of the station, and humans were only allowed in 3 of them. The Kithrans were careful about their guests. They did not trust easily. Daniel understood why. The Kithrans were an insectoid species, tall and graceful with hard shells that shimmered in shades of purple and blue. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Humans had only reached the stars 2 centuries ago. To the Kithrans, humans were children playing in a world they did not understand. The peace talks had been going on for 3 days. Daniel had spent most of that time checking power systems and making sure the human delegation's equipment worked properly. It was not exciting work, but it kept him busy. On the 4th day, everything changed. Daniel was walking through a corridor on his way back to the human section when he smelled smoke. It was faint at first, just a hint of something burning in the recycled air. He stopped and looked around. The corridor was empty. The Kithrans had very strict schedules, and this was their rest period. The smell grew stronger. Daniel followed it. He knew he should call for help. He knew he should report it to the station authorities. But something in his gut told him there was no time. He had been an engineer long enough to know that where there was smoke, fire was not far behind. He turned a corner and saw it. Black smoke poured from a doorway at the end of the corridor. Orange light flickered inside. Daniel ran toward it without thinking. The room was some kind of storage area. Containers had fallen from shelves, and several of them were burning. The fire suppression system had failed, or perhaps it had never activated. In the center of the chaos, trapped under a heavy metal shelf, was a KY, the Randot. She was smaller than the other Kithrans Daniel had seen. Her shell was a lighter shade of purple, almost lavender, and her compound eyes were wide with fear. She pushed against the shelf, but it would not move. The fire was spreading toward her. Daniel did not hesitate. He ran into the room, covering his mouth with his sleeve. The smoke was thick and hot, and it burned his lungs with every breath. Kithrans could handle much harsher conditions than humans. What was uncomfortable for them was dangerous for him. He reached the fallen shelf and grabbed it. It was heavy, far heavier than he expected. He pulled with all his strength, but it barely moved. The Kithran looked at him. Her mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "Human," she said, her voice translator making the words sound flat. "You should not be here." "Neither should you," Daniel said. He looked around and found a long metal rod among the debris. He shoved it under the shelf and used it as a lever. "When I lift, you pull yourself out." She nodded. Daniel pushed down on the rod with everything he had. His muscles screamed. His vision blurred from the smoke. But the shelf rose, just a few inches, just enough. The Kithran pulled herself free. Daniel dropped the rod and grabbed her arm. "Can you walk?" "Yes." They ran together toward the door. The fire was everywhere now, and the heat was unbearable. Daniel could feel his skin burning. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. But he did not stop. He could not stop. They burst out of the room and into the corridor. Fresh air hit Daniel's face, and he gasped. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. The Kithran caught him before he hit the ground. "Human," she said. "Why did you do that?" Daniel looked up at her. His vision was fading. "Because you needed help," he said. Then everything went black. Daniel woke up in a medical bay. The lights were too bright, and everything smelled like chemicals. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pushed him back down. "Easy, Carter." It was Commander Grant, She stood beside his bed, her face tight with worry. "You inhaled a lot of smoke. The doctors say you need rest." "The Kithaeron," Daniel said. His throat hurt when he spoke. "Is she okay?" Commander Grant nodded. "She's fine. Thanks to you." She paused. "Do you know who you saved?" Daniel shook his head. "Neither did I, at first. But I found out about an hour ago." Commander Grant took a deep breath. "She's Princess Salith, youngest daughter of Queen Valthera." Daniel blinked. "The Queen? As in, the ruler of the entire Kithaeron Empire?" "The very same." Daniel let his head fall back against the pillow. "I didn't know. I just saw someone who needed help. I know." Commander Grant smiled, but there was something strange in her eyes. Something that looked almost like fear. "The problem is, the Kithaerons have very specific customs about this kind of thing. When someone saves a royal's life, it creates what they call a blood debt." "What does that mean?" Before Commander Grant could answer, the door to the medical bay slid open. A Kithaeron guard stepped inside. He was tall and covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Behind him stood two more guards. "Human Daniel Carter," the guard announced. "Queen Valthera demands your presence. You will come with us immediately." Daniel looked at Commander Grant. She squeezed his shoulder. "I'll be right there with you. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Daniel nodded and slowly got to his feet. His body ached, and his lungs still burned with every breath. But he had a feeling that his problems were just beginning. As he followed the guards out of the medical bay, he could not shake the image of the princess's eyes, looking at him through the smoke. She had seemed surprised that he came for her. Surprised that a human would risk his life for a stranger. He wondered what that said about how the Kithaeron saw his people. He wondered what the Queen wanted with him, and somewhere deep in his gut, he wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The walk to the throne room felt like the longest journey of Daniel's life. The Kithaeron guards moved in perfect silence, their armored feet making no sound on the metal floor. Commander Grant walked beside him, her jaw tight and her eyes sharp. She was already planning, Daniel knew. Already thinking about how to handle whatever came next. The corridors grew wider and more decorated as they moved deeper into the royal section of the station. The walls were covered with carvings that told stories Daniel could not read. Lights glowed in soft purple and gold, casting strange shadows everywhere. Finally, they reached a massive door made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. The guards stopped, and the door slid open with a low hum. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Daniel could barely see it. Hundreds of Kithaerons filled the space, standing in neat rows on either side of a long walkway. They were nobles, Daniel realized. Warriors, advisors, all of them staring at the small human who had dared to enter their sacred space. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystal, sat Queen Val-THIR. She was the largest Kithaeron Daniel had ever seen. Her shell was deep purple, almost black, and it gleamed with patterns that looked like stars. Her eyes were ancient and cold, and when she looked at Daniel, he felt like she was seeing straight through him. Beside the throne stood Princess Salith. She wore robes of silver and white, and her lavender shell caught the light beautifully. She did not look at Daniel. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. The guards led Daniel and Commander Grant to the center of the room. Then they stepped back, leaving the two humans alone before the Queen. Silence filled the throne room. It pressed against Daniel's ears like a physical weight. Then Queen Valthera spoke. "Human," she said. Her voice was deep and powerful, and her translator made it echo through the room. "The person whose life you rescued yesterday is my daughter, and you will marry her." Daniel was sure he had misheard. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Commander Grant made a small choking sound beside him. Your Majesty, Daniel finally managed. I think there might be some misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding. The Queen's voice was flat, final. You saved the life of a royal princess. By the ancient laws of our empire, you have created a blood debt that can only be repaid through union. You will join our family. You will become consort to my daughter. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Your Majesty, I am honored. Truly, I am. But in human culture, marriage is not something that can be decided like this. It requires consent from both people. It requires time to know each other. The Queen tilted her head. Her compound eyes studied him like he was some strange insect she had found under a rock. You find this arrangement unacceptable? It's not that I find it unacceptable, Daniel said carefully. It's that this is not how my people do things. I saved your daughter because she needed help, not because I wanted a reward. A murmur ran through the crowd of nobles. Some of them looked confused. Others looked offended. The Queen raised one long, clawed hand, and the murmurs stopped instantly. You saved a life without expecting anything in return, she asked. Yes, this is normal for humans? Daniel nodded. We help people because it's the right thing to do, not because of what we might get from it. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she leaned forward on her throne. Fascinating. But our laws are our laws, human. The blood debt exists. It must be honored. To refuse would be an insult to 10,000 years of tradition. Commander Grant stepped forward. Your Majesty, surely there must be some alternative. Our species have different customs. Perhaps we can find a solution that respects both. Before the Queen could answer, another voice rang out across the throne room. There is no alternative. A Kithrin stepped out from behind the throne. He was old. His shell faded to gray in places, but he carried himself with absolute authority. His eyes were small and sharp, and they fixed on Daniel with open disgust. This is High Advisor Korthax, the Queen said. He is keeper of our traditions. Korthax walked slowly down the steps of the throne platform. The blood debt is sacred. It has been honored for generations beyond counting. No outsider, certainly no human, will be allowed to break it. I'm not trying to break anything, Daniel said. I just want to find a way that works for everyone. There is no way that works for everyone. Korthax stopped in front of Daniel. He was nearly twice the human's height, and he looked down at him with cold contempt. You are weak. You are small. You come from a species that has existed for the blink of an eye, and yet you dare to refuse the highest honor our empire can offer. Daniel held his ground. I'm not refusing the honor. I'm asking for understanding. Korthax's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. Understanding? The Kithrin Empire does not negotiate with lesser species. He turned to address the crowd. This human thinks he can dictate terms to us. He thinks his primitive customs matter more than our sacred laws. The nobles stirred. Daniel could feel their anger building. If this human refuses the marriage, Korthax continued, it is an insult to the princess, an insult to the Queen, an insult to the entire empire. He turned back to Daniel, his eyes gleaming. And insults must be answered. What are you saying? Commander Grant demanded. Korthax smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I am saying that refusal of the blood debt could be considered an act of war. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel looked at Commander Grant. Her face had gone pale. He knew what she was thinking. Humanity could not afford a war with the Kithrin Empire. They were too powerful, too advanced. It would be a disaster. He looked at Princess Saleth. For the first time, she met his eyes. And in that brief moment, he saw something unexpected. She looked just as trapped as he felt. The Queen spoke again. The human will be given one day to consider his decision. He will remain on the station under guard. She stood, and the entire room bowed. This audience is concluded. As the guards led Daniel away, he could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on his back. He had come to this station as an engineer on a routine mission. Now the fate of 2 species rested on his shoulders, and he had no idea what to do. Daniel sat in his quarters and stared at the wall. The room was comfortable enough, but the guards outside the door made it clear that he was not a guest. He was a prisoner in all but name. Commander Grant had spent an hour with him after the audience, trying to find a way out of the situation. But there were no easy answers. The Kithran laws were ancient and absolute. The blood debt was real, and refusing it could start a war that humanity could not win. Maybe I should just accept it, Daniel had said. Commander Grant had shaken her head. I can't ask you to do that. I won't ask you to marry someone you don't know just to keep the peace. What choice do I have? She had no answer for that. Now Daniel was alone with his thoughts. He kept replaying the fire in his mind. The smoke. The heat. The princess trapped under that shelf. He had not thought about consequences when he ran into that room. He had not thought about politics or traditions or blood debts. He had just seen someone who needed help. And now everything was complicated. A soft knock came at the door. Daniel frowned. The guards had not announced anyone. He walked to the door and pressed the release panel. Princess Salith stood in the corridor. She was alone. May I enter? She asked. Her voice was quieter than Daniel expected. Almost nervous, of course. Daniel stepped aside. The princess walked into his quarters and looked around. Her compound eyes took in everything, from the simple bed to the small window that showed the stars outside. Then she turned to face him. I must apologize, she said. Daniel blinked. Apologize? For what? For this situation. Salith folded her hands together. It was a very human gesture, and Daniel wondered where she had learned it. I never wanted to trap you. When you saved my life, I was grateful. But I never imagined my mother would invoke the blood debt. It's not your fault, Daniel said. You didn't choose your customs any more than I chose mine. Salith nodded slowly. That is true, but I still feel responsible. She paused. I have been studying humans for several cycles. In secret, of course. My mother would not approve. But I found your species fascinating. Fascinating how? You are so different from us. Salith moved to the window and looked out at the stars. Kithrans live by tradition. Everything we do is determined by laws that were written before our grandmothers were born. But humans seem to make their own rules. You adapt. You change. You do things simply because you believe they are right, not because someone told you to. Daniel joined her at the window. That's not always a good thing. Sometimes we make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But your species admits them. You learn from them. You grow. Salith turned to face him. When you ran into that fire, you did not know who I was. You did not care. You just wanted to help. Anyone would have done the same. No. Salith's voice was firm. They would not. A Kithran would have called for help and waited. They would have followed protocol. They would not have risked their life for a stranger. She paused. You almost died trying to save me, and you expected nothing in return. Daniel did not know what to say. That is why I came here tonight, Salith continued. I want to help you. I want to find a way out of this that does not destroy everything. Is there a way? Salith was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. There is one possibility. In our law, there is something called a trial period. When 2 people are matched for marriage, they can request 30 cycles to test the arrangement. If both parties agree that the match is unsuitable, the engagement can be dissolved with honor. Daniel felt hope spark in his chest. That sounds perfect. It is not perfect, Salith warned. During the trial period, you would have to remain on the station. You would have to participate in Kithrin customs. And at the end, if we dissolve the engagement, there will still be those who see it as an insult. But it wouldn't mean war? No, it would not mean war. Daniel nodded. Then let's do it. We'll propose the trial period to your mother. That gives us time to figure out a real solution. Saleth looked at him with something that might have been admiration. You agree so easily? You would stay here, among strangers, for 30 cycles? If it keeps the peace, yes. Daniel smiled. Besides, I'm an engineer. I solve problems. This is just a bigger problem than most. For the first time, Saleth made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are very strange, Daniel Carter. I've been told that before. They talked for another hour, planning how to present their proposal to the Queen. By the time Saleth left, Daniel felt better than he had since this whole mess started. There was a path forward. It was not perfect, but it was something. The next morning, Daniel and Saleth stood before Queen Valthera together. You wish to invoke the trial period? The Queen asked. Her voice was unreadable. Yes, Your Majesty, Saleth said. The human has shown great honor. He deserves the chance to prove himself properly, according to our traditions. The Queen studied them both. Her ancient eyes missed nothing. Very well, she said at last. The trial period is granted. 30 cycles. Daniel let out a breath he did not know he was holding. But before he could feel relief, High Advisor Korthax stepped forward. His face was twisted with anger. This is unacceptable, he declared. The human has manipulated the princess. He has used his primitive tricks to turn her against her own people. I have done nothing of the kind, Daniel said. Silence. Korthax turned to the crowd of nobles. Can you not see what is happening? This human is playing us for fools. He will use the trial period to gather information about our empire. He will share it with his people. He will betray us. The nobles murmured among themselves. Daniel could see doubt spreading through the room. The trial period is law, Saleth said firmly. You cannot deny it. No, Korthax agreed. But I can demand that the human prove himself worthy of it. He smiled coldly. I invoke the right of challenge. Before the trial period can begin, the human must face the 3 tests of a royal consort. Daniel felt his stomach drop. What tests? A test of wisdom, a test of courage, and a test of sacrifice. Korthax's eyes gleamed with malice. If he fails any of them, the engagement is void, and he will be expelled from Kithrin space in disgrace. The Queen looked at Daniel. Do you accept the challenge, human? Every eye in the room was on him. Daniel knew this was a trap. Korthax wanted him to fail, wanted to humiliate humanity, but refusing would make him look weak. And it would give Korthax exactly what he wanted. Daniel straightened his shoulders. I accept. Korthax smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. Then let the trials begin. The royal arena was the largest enclosed space Daniel had ever seen. It was carved into the heart of the Kithrin flagship, a vast dome of dark stone and gleaming metal. Thousands of Kithrins filled the seats that rose in tiers around the central platform. Their eyes reflected the light like a sea of stars. Daniel stood alone in the center of it all. Commander Grant had wanted to be with him, but the trials were meant to be faced alone. That was the tradition. The Queen herself sat in a private box high above the arena floor, with Princess Saleth beside her. Korthax stood at the edge of the platform, ready to oversee the challenges. The first test is the test of wisdom, Korthax announced. His voice echoed through the arena. A true consort must be able to think clearly under pressure. He must solve problems that others cannot. A holographic display flickered to life in front of Daniel. It showed a complex pattern of shapes and symbols, constantly shifting and changing. Daniel had seen Kithran puzzles before. They were famous throughout the galaxy for being almost impossible for other species to solve. "You have 100 heartbeats to find the solution," Korthax said. "Begin." Daniel studied the puzzle. The shapes were moving in patterns that seemed random at first. Kithran logic was different from human logic. It was more structured, more rigid. They looked for patterns within patterns, layers of meaning hidden beneath the surface. But Daniel was not KY the Rand dot. He did not try to find the hidden pattern. Instead, he looked at the puzzle as a whole. He thought about what it was trying to do, not what it was trying to hide. The shapes were colored: red, blue, green, yellow. They moved in sequences that repeated, but not perfectly. There was always one shape that broke the pattern. Daniel smiled. The puzzle was not about finding the pattern. It was about finding what did not belong. He reached out and touched the single, yellow triangle that moved differently from all the others. The hologram froze. Then it dissolved into light. "Correct," said a mechanical voice. The crowd stirred. Korthax's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. "The first test is passed," the Queen announced. "The human has demonstrated wisdom." Daniel allowed himself a small breath of relief. "One down, 2 to go." Korthax stepped forward. "The second test is the test of courage. A consort must be willing to face danger without fear. He must prove that he will protect the royal family no matter the cost." A gate opened at the far end of the arena. From the darkness beyond came a sound that made Daniel's blood run cold. It was a low growl, deep and hungry, like thunder trapped in a living throat. The creature that emerged was enormous. It looked like a mix between a tiger and a lizard, with 6 legs and scales that glittered like black diamonds. Its eyes were red, and its mouth was full of teeth that could snap Daniel in half with a single bite. "This is a Velther," Korthax explained, his voice filled with cruel amusement. "One of the deadliest predators in our empire. You must face it, human. Survive for 50 heartbeats, and you pass the test." The creature stalked toward Daniel. Its eyes were fixed on him, tracking every movement. Daniel had no weapons, no armor, nothing but his wits. The Velther charged. Daniel dove to the side, barely avoiding the snap of its massive jaws. He rolled and came up running, putting distance between himself and the beast. But the Velther was fast. It turned and came at him again. Daniel's mind raced. He could not outrun this thing. He could not fight it. But he remembered something he had read about predators back on Earth, about how they responded to certain behaviors. He stopped running. The Velther slowed. Confused by the sudden change, Daniel faced the creature directly. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to calm his racing heart. He lowered his eyes, avoiding direct contact with the beast's gaze. He made himself small, non-threatening. The Velther stopped a few meters away. It growled, but the sound was uncertain now. Daniel slowly crouched down. He extended one hand, palm up, offering it to the creature. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The Velther tilted its massive head. Its red eyes studied him. Seconds passed. Each one felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, the Velther moved forward. It lowered its head and sniffed Daniel's hand. A long tongue flicked out and touched his palm. And then, to the shock of everyone in the arena, the creature lay down at Daniel's feet. The crowd erupted in noise. Some were cheering. Others were shouting in disbelief. Korthax stared at Daniel with undisguised fury. "The second test is passed," the Queen announced. There was something new in her voice, something that might have been respect. "The human has demonstrated courage." Daniel stood slowly, careful not to disturb the Velther. His heart was still pounding, but he kept his face calm. 2 down, 1 to go. Korthax was visibly angry now. He strode to the center of the platform, his claws clicking against the stone. The final test is the test of sacrifice. A consort must be willing to give up what is most precious to him for the good of the royal family. He turned to face Daniel. What do you value most, human? Your position? Your career? Your chance to return home to your own kind? Daniel said nothing. The test is simple, Korthax continued. You will give up something of true value, something that costs you. Only then will you prove that you are worthy. Daniel thought about his life, his career in the fleet, his friends back on Earth, his dreams of exploring the galaxy, everything he had worked for. Then he thought about the peace talks, about the war that could happen if he failed, about all the people, human and Kithrin, who would suffer. He looked up at the Queen's box, at Princess Salith, who had shown him kindness when she did not have to, at Commander Grant, who had trusted him even when things seemed impossible. I offer my position, Daniel said. His voice was clear and steady. I offer my career in the human fleet. I offer my chance to return home. If it means protecting the peace between our peoples, I will stay here. I will give up everything I have. The arena fell silent. Korthax laughed. Words are easy, human. How do we know you mean them? Because I already proved it. Daniel met Korthax's eyes without flinching. When I ran into that fire, I did not think about what I might lose. I did not think about myself at all. I just saw someone who needed help. That is who I am. That is who humans are. He turned to address the crowd. We don't sacrifice because we expect rewards. We sacrifice because it's right. Because protecting others matters more than protecting ourselves. The nobles stirred. Daniel could see them looking at each other, whispering. Princess Salith stood up in the Queen's box. This human has proven himself more honorable than many Kithrin nobles I have known, she declared. He has faced every test with courage and wisdom. He has offered to give up everything he has. What more could anyone ask? The crowd began to murmur in agreement. Korthax's face twisted with rage. He had expected Daniel to fail. He had expected to humiliate the human in front of everyone. Instead, Daniel had turned the trials into a victory. The tests are complete, Queen Valthira announced. Her voice silenced the crowd. The human has passed all three. The trial period will proceed. Daniel felt relief wash over him. He had done it, but as the crowd began to disperse, he noticed something. Korthax was watching him with hatred in his eyes. And there was something else in that look. Something desperate, like a creature that had been cornered. Daniel realized that this was not over. Korthax had too much to lose. He would try something else. The question was what and whether Daniel would be ready for it. The celebration after the trials was supposed to be a happy occasion. The nobles gathered in the great hall, and servants brought out food and drink. Music played from somewhere above, strange melodies that Daniel did not recognize but found oddly beautiful. But Daniel could not relax. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. He stood near a window, watching the stars outside. Commander Grant was beside him, a glass of some purple liquid in her hand that she had not touched. You did well today, she said. It doesn't feel like it's over. That's because it isn't. Commander Grant lowered her voice. I've been watching Korthax. He's been talking to some of the older nobles all evening. They don't look happy. Daniel nodded. He had noticed the same thing. Across the hall, Princess Salith was speaking with her mother. The Queen listened with her ancient eyes, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and looked directly at Daniel. Something passed between them. A question, maybe. Or a warning. Before Daniel could figure out what it meant, Korthax stepped into the center of the hall. He raised his hand, and the music stopped. My fellow Kithrins, he announced. Today we witnessed something unprecedented. A human passed our sacred trials. Some call this honorable. He paused. I call it suspicious, the crowd murmured. Think about it, Korthax continued. How did this human survive the Velthor? Our greatest warriors have fallen to that beast. Yet this small, weak creature tamed it with nothing but words. He showed courage, someone called out. He showed wisdom, or perhaps he showed treachery. Korthax's voice grew louder. Perhaps the humans knew about these trials in advance. Perhaps they prepared. Perhaps this was all part of a plan to infiltrate our empire. That's ridiculous, Commander Grant said, stepping forward. We had no idea any of this would happen. Korthax ignored her. And let us not forget how this all began. A fire in a restricted area. A princess trapped. And a human just happened to be nearby to save her. Daniel felt cold spread through his chest. He suddenly understood where this was going. What are you suggesting? Queen Valthera asked. Her voice was calm, but there was danger beneath it. I am suggesting that the fire was not an accident. Korthax pointed at Daniel. I am suggesting that the humans started it themselves. They knew the princess was in that area. They arranged for their agent to play the hero. And now they have positioned themselves at the heart of our empire. The crowd exploded in noise. Accusations flew back and forth. Some nobles shouted in agreement with Korthax. Others defended Daniel. It was chaos. This is insane, Daniel said. I didn't start that fire. I didn't even know who the princess was until after I saved her. Lies, Korthax hissed. All lies. Actually, a new voice cut through the noise. I can prove he's telling the truth. Everyone turned. A young Kitharan technician stood at the edge of the crowd. She held a data tablet in her trembling hands. Speak. The queen commanded. The technician walked forward, her steps uncertain. I work in the station's security section. After the fire, I was ordered to analyze the incident, to find out what went wrong. She took a shaky breath. I found something. The fire suppression system in that room was disabled manually. From the inside. What does that prove? Korthax demanded. The human could have done it. No, he couldn't. The technician held up her tablet. The system was disabled using a royal override code. A code that only a handful of people have access to. She paused. Including you, High Advisor. Silence fell over the hall. Korthax's face went pale. This is absurd. I would never harm the princess. There's more. The technician's voice grew stronger. I found traces of accelerant in the wreckage. The same accelerant used in our military weapons. Someone wanted that fire to spread fast. Someone wanted to make sure the princess couldn't escape. The queen rose from her seat. Her eyes burned with fury. You are accusing my High Advisor of attempting to murder my daughter? I am presenting evidence, Your Majesty. The technician bowed low. The truth is in the data. Daniel watched Korthax. The old Kitharan's composure was cracking. His hands were shaking. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. This is a setup, Korthax said. The humans planted this evidence. They're trying to destroy me. Then explain the override code, Salith said. She had moved to stand beside Daniel, her voice cold. Explain why your code was used to disable the safety systems. Korthax opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. Take him, the queen commanded. Guards moved forward and seized Korthax. He struggled, but he was old, and they were strong. This isn't over, he spat. The humans are your enemies. They will destroy everything we have built. You're fools to trust them. The queen walked down from her throne. She stopped in front of Korthax and looked at him with eyes that held no mercy. You tried to kill my daughter, she said quietly. You tried to start a war with another species. You tried to use our sacred traditions as weapons for your own power. She leaned closer. You are the enemy here, not the humans. Korthax was dragged away, still shouting. His voice faded as the doors closed behind him. The queen turned to face Daniel. He expected anger, suspicion, more demands. Instead, she bowed her head. I misjudged your people, she said. I saw humans as weak, primitive, beneath us. She looked up at him. I was wrong. You showed courage when you ran into that fire. You showed wisdom when you faced our trials. And you showed honor when you offered to give up everything for peace. Daniel did not know what to say. The blood debt is dissolved, the queen continued. You are free of any obligation to my daughter. She paused. But I would like to offer you something else. An alliance. True partnership between our peoples. With you as the first human ambassador to my court. Daniel blinked. Ambassador? You have already done more to bridge our cultures than decades of diplomacy. The queen almost smiled. I can think of no one better suited for the role. Daniel looked at Commander Grant. She nodded slowly, a proud smile on her face. He looked at Princess Salith. She was watching him with those beautiful compound eyes, and for the first time, he saw warmth in them. I would be honored, Daniel said later that night. Daniel stood on an observation deck overlooking the stars. Salith joined him, her silver robe shimmering in the dim light. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For being kind. For being brave. For being, she searched for the word, human. Daniel laughed. I don't know if that's a compliment. It is now. Salith moved closer to him. I would like to continue getting to know you. Not because of any debt or tradition, but because I want to. Daniel smiled. What do you call that? Spending time with someone just because you want to? Salith tilted her head. I don't know. What do humans call it? Daniel looked at her, at the stars behind her, at the future that suddenly seemed full of possibilities. We call it a first date. Salith made that sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. Then I would like to go on a first date with you, Daniel Carter. I'd like that too. They stood together in the quiet, watching the universe spin slowly past them. Two people from different worlds, finding common ground in the most unexpected way. Across the galaxy, humans continued to surprise everyone. Not with their ships or their weapons or their technology, but with something far more powerful than their stubborn, reckless, beautiful capacity to care.